We still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe.
Good afternoon, welcome along to NUFC Matters. A belated happy Christmas to everybody. Obviously we didn't do one on Christmas Day. I hope everybody had a good time, whether you were with family or whether you were on your own. I hope you had a great time and a nice festive period. And that's it, all of that hassle and money spending and running around like a blue horse fly all over for one day, one solitary day. Got New Year's Eve obviously to come up next, which is a couple of days away, but we're not here to talk about the festivities. Of course, we're here to talk about Newcastle United, or I guess whatever else you want to talk about. John Askew has sent us some questions as always, but as I can see, last night's 1-0 defeat away at Manchester United has certainly got you lot primed with a few questions as well. And I'll just turn the sound up because I think it's probably quite quiet. There we go. That's probably a bit better and probably a bit too loud, but there we go. Okay, Stephen Kennedy. What did he say? Well, Steve, surely the manager needs to be held accountable. We just don't look like winning away from home. And is he loath to think about outside the box when it comes to match changes? You're chasing a goal. What else does he say after that? But won't play with two strikers. We were weak in the tackle, second to every ball situation and guilty of overcrowding the box when we've got a corner and keep getting hit with breakaways. Yeah, I mean, look, so much to analyse about last night, really, to be honest. Disappointing is what to say about that. It was a very, very disappointing result. In a game Newcastle United really should have won. There's no doubt about it. Newcastle should have won that game. Manchester United just weren't the same team that we've seen over the years, and it's just progressively getting worse. It really is. And yeah, of course, yeah, the manager should be held accountable. If results aren't going his way, it's not good enough. And is Eddie capable of change? Is what Stephen finishes off his question with. He's got to be, but I think what we've learned over the 4 years with Eddie so far is he's a very stubborn manager. He's not somebody who will change just because other people are saying you need to change. I think the frustrating thing about last night, very similar to the Sunderland game in the sense that he just wouldn't make the obvious change, which is, bring Wisser on, play him with Altamada and go for it. 67% of possession Newcastle had last night. It's the most possession anyone's had at Manchester United for many, many years in a home game. But on top of that as well, 16 shots on goal, 16 shots, 3 on target. That's the problem. There is the problem. In a nutshell, we've only got 3 shots on goal. There is clearly something not right in that dressing room. I don't care what anybody says. It looks as if there is something wrong. Something is undermining all of the hard work that is being done by Eddie Howe and his coaching staff. There is something clearly not right. Is there something since Isaac's departure? I think it's more than that. I think there's more to be said. I think there's more happening. I think there's been I clearly think something's happened to cause that wonderful togetherness we had to collapse. George picked up on it months ago, and I didn't really see it when George was going on about it, about players getting off the bus and people looking despondent. But I've looked at it more over the course of the last 3 or 4 months, and you can see it on the pitch now. Look at Bruno, man. Look at Bruno's face. He's exasperated. He's as down as we are. You can see it on his face. He can't do it on his own. Lewis Hall can't do it on his own. Lewis Miley can't do it on his own. There has to be a team playing there. And at times there's been that. Chelsea at home, first half. But that's just not enough to do it once in a blue moon. It really isn't. And it's all these different pieces of the jigsaw that aren't fitting together at the minute that's causing this horrendous away form, and it is causing a lot of anxiety amongst the supporters because, of course, after winning the Carabao Cup, everybody felt this year we could go on and build on that. Having Isaac stolen away from us for 130 million and not replacing him and not being allowed to replace him with the players that we originally wanted, that's what's really affected us, you know. I've seen people say we've wasted 90 million, 100 million on Alanga and on Ramsey, and I can't argue with that. Over the course of the first few months of the season, I cannot argue with that. Those players have not been the players that we were hoping they were going to be. We thought because they were both Premier League players that they would fit straight in and hit the ground running. It just hasn't happened. Wissa, of course, injured and unable to play that first part of the season. Valdemara, who's not an out-and-out striker like Isaac was, has done well. He's done brilliantly. You know, he's nearly in double figures for goals this season. But he's not the player that we were hoping that he would be. He's not the goal scorer that Newcastle desperately need. And that's where our problem lies. And yeah, we've got injuries at the back. You know, but that doesn't jeopardize what's going on up front. And Newcastle aren't good enough up front. They aren't finishing their chances. They aren't scoring goals. The midfield aren't shooting on target on when they've got a chance at goal, a sight at goal, and that's what's letting us down. It's as simple as that. And Eddie has to take some of that blame, not all of it, but he takes some of it. The players clearly letting Eddie down at the moment. Why? Only they know that. Only they can tell you that. It's nothing to do with training. It's nothing to do with not being able to train. That's rubbish. That's rubbish. They are training. They are going into training. They are doing stuff. Okay, he won't be able to do, you know, maybe certain things that he would normally do, but we're not stupid, Eddie. We know what the situation is. And, you know, we don't expect him to come out and hang his players out to dry. We don't expect him to come out and say we were crap. We don't expect him to pick out players and say he was naff, he was crap, he was rubbish, he was terrible. That's not the way it works. You know, football managers defend their players as far as they can. And yeah, you know, but it's not the worst season we've ever had. But at the same time, it's well below par, well below where we were last season. And that's what's disappointing and that's what's hurting. And the fact that Sunderland are in our division as well, and at the moment, you know, 4 points above us or whatever it is, that hurts as well because that's your local rivals. That's your rivals who we all thought would be, you know, making up the numbers and probably going straight back down. They've managed to sign a boatload of players, bring in a manager who at the moment is doing what Eddie Howe's done at Newcastle over the last 4 years, bucking the trend, doing great things and making a mockery of the Premier League at the moment. But that will change as well, as we all know. But at the moment, because that comes with Newcastle United not playing well and not getting the results, it's a knock-on effect, and it has us all feeling very down. And yeah, the social media stuff, we'll go into that. We'll go into it time and time again on you. Listen, it's a cesspit. If you go on Twitter, you know what to expect. You can't have an opinion on there without being lambasted, sniped at, slagged off, you name it. You say something on there, and if you put something on Twitter, you are laying yourself wide open for criticism. And if you don't want that, then don't put it on. Facebook, different depending on who you've got on Facebook. If you're putting it on your own profile and you've got your mates on there, then it's going to be good banter. But if you're a member of a group with 20,000 plus followers, expect a bit of banter. Expect people to come on and have a pop at you. Expect people to be, how out. Expect people to be how in. Expect people to not know what the hell to say, because that's what social media is all about. It's a cross section of people online who you'll never meet probably, and some of them probably would never want to meet. But at the same time, they're all going to have an opinion, and it might be not the opinion that you have. So that's, again, just part and parcel of what we're going through. But I've had a bit of a rant there, Stephen, to your question. Gary says, have we become too predictable? Do teams know that if we sit deep, we haven't got the tools to break them down? Of course we have, Gary. 100% we mate. We've become so predictable that it's embarrassing, because we all know now that Eddie Howe is going to make a substitution on 65 minutes. He'll make 1, 2 or 3 substitutions, and we know that he'll be taking off X, Y and Z. We know that, it'll either be Jacob Murphy or Anthony Gordon, and on will come Harvey Barnes, or vice versa. If Harvey Barnes starts, we know it'll be the other way around. We know if Valdemara goes off, then it'll be Wissa coming on, or Asula if he was available. And we know that if it's a midfield substitution, who will be coming on. It's so predictable, and we know that. We know that it's going to be Willock or Ramsey, who aren't as good as on that day Tonali, Bruno, and Joe Linton. There's no doubt that we're losing. And we've lost some big name players in this team, players who've led us by the scruff of the neck for the last 4 years. Kieran Trippier, Dan Burn, and Joe Linton. Those 3 players have been so important and imperative to our progress and success over the last few years. The fact that Burn and Trippier are both injured and Newcastle aren't going through a great spell at the moment is not a surprise. More of a surprise that, we just have forgotten how to take a lead and keep it as well. The back 4 has been an issue, but it's scoring goals. Last night, Newcastle were being predicted pre-match by Roy Keane and Neville and Carragher to win at Man United, and that Newcastle would probably have to score, Manchester United would probably have to score 3 goals to win it. As it happened, it was a one-off volley, and we could have been playing until midnight. We wouldn't have scored. That's how bad it is. And yes, we are predictable. Do the board need to come out and let the fans, players and staff know, not in detail, but give them timeframes and scales to the future investment in infrastructure in the club? Players want to see progress, not only ones here, but ones we need to attract and move forward. I just don't think they can do that at the moment. I really, really don't. I can't see them ever coming out and telling you what's going on with regards to infrastructure, etc. We know that there's been an application submitted for extension on the training ground. Eddie came out in the press conference and said that was vitally important to making things move forward. The Chronicle make a big thing of it. They're saying that he's not sure if he'll be here when that gets sorted out. Of course, you can read whatever you want to read into that, but that can mean one of 2 things, that he's, as far as he's concerned, it's not going to happen anytime soon, and he may not be here, which is a fair enough comment. Or other people can read into that Eddie's on borrowed time, because at the moment we aren't rising to the occasion this time round, and who knows what the situation is. But yeah, we don't hear much from PIF, and I just don't think that'll change. I really, really don't. Ches, Eddie's been largely successful in the transfer windows overall. Is it time to hand over the reins to the director of football? Ches, I mean, who really is in charge of transfers? Somebody said to me, would you hand Eddie Howe 150 million to spend in January? Nobody hands the manager money anymore. It's not the manager who makes these decisions. And, Eddie's not the man who's sitting with, he'll provide a list, of course he will, but he's not the man who ultimately has that final say. We saw that in that Amazon documentary that Newcastle United did, which, shows you what happens. There was no Eddie Howe there sitting there talking about players. It was literally them, Amanda and Meerdad at the time, who were working with the sporting director to say, this is what we're going to do. So yeah, I think it's always the scout and the director of football anyway. And in January, we didn't have a director of football. And as Mitch has said on countless occasions, since the transfer window closed in August, who has made those decisions to sign those players? Who was the man who said sign Alanga? Who was the man who said sign Ramsey? Because ultimately, £90 million worth plus of talent is letting us down. And they're not the only ones to blame for the poor season so far, because it is a poor season, even though we are in the semi-finals of the League Cup. But it is poor as far as the Premier League is concerned. Who made those decisions? Whoever made those decisions is the person to blame for the predicament we find ourselves in at this moment in time. Paul Charlton, good afternoon. Last night was crying out for Wissett to come on with Nick, not swap like for like. That was a second string Man United and we couldn't break them down. Forget Europe or winning any cups this season. And I can understand why everyone's feeling like that. He's gone on to say Newcastle's regressed this season, whichever way you look at it. Second worst away record behind Wolves. Yeah, and you can't, look, you can sugarcoat it, you can say what you want, but at the moment, things are looking fairly desperate. The away form isn't a blip. It's a major concern, and we are really in trouble if our home form goes the same way as our away form. I'm not saying relegation, of course, but what I am saying is we are looking desperately short of qualifying for any type of European football. It's not over, Paul. I will say that, and I know that sounds as if I'm a happy clapper, but it's until mathematically it's over, then I will continue to say that it is possible, but things do need to change. Things massively need to change. And if they don't change, then I agree with you. But at the moment, we are still in with a chance of getting through to the next round of the Champions League. And we are in the League Cup semi-finals, Carabao Cup semi-finals, against a very difficult opposition, it has to be said. But we play the home game first, which is a plus point. I think we need to get 3 or 4-0 up in that game, mind, to make sure we get to Wembley. But it's not over yet. It's not over. We haven't been knocked out the Carabao Cup at the first legs. We haven't, we still got the FA Cup coming in January. I can still be optimistic. I can still be, but we need to change things, and Eddie needs to change things. And whatever the problem is in that dressing room, he needs to sort out and needs to address. I have had lots of messages from people who I know suggesting X, Y, and Z is happening. Stuff I would never say on here because it's not right. And but I don't think it takes a genius to see that the team camaraderie that we had is not there at the moment. And you've got to ask yourself why. Why isn't that there? Why aren't Newcastle United performing? Why isn't this the same as it has been under Eddie for the last 4 years? Lots of questions, lots of potential answers, but nobody really knows apart from Eddie and the lads in the dressing room. We've got a squad full of runners, but very few playmakers. What's the fix? Get back the intensity with athletic players or change the way we play with new type of players in January. Ches, if I knew the answer to that, then Newcastle would probably give us a contract. I don't know. It seems very much as if it's an attitude thing. It seems as if it's deeper. And I think that what George Mitchell was saying early in the year about players getting off the bus and the way that they looked, somebody brought it up as well. Somebody else has brought it up as well. I think he's right. I think there is an underlying problem at Newcastle. And whether that's the departure of Isak has upset those players who were left at the club and there's been a split, whether that's because certain players aren't getting what they want, or it's not what it said on the tin when Amanda Mirdad sold them the dream. I don't know. But some of the players will also feel as if the job's been done. They've come to St James's Park. They've signed for Newcastle United. They've won us a trophy, which nobody had done in 70 years. And now they find maybe they feel as if they just don't owe us one anymore. And that's dangerous. And that's my theory, by the way, that certain players may feel, well, I've done what I said I was going to do. I've kept Newcastle United in the Premier League and I've won them a trophy. They can always, they'll always be legends. Even Isak will be a legend, whether you like it or not. He will always be a legend for what he did. The way that he left the club is is unfortunate, but he scored the winner in the cup final. He got us to the cup finals as well. We had a great run with him, and he got us into Europe. So we owe Isaac, as supporters, we owe him that decency to respect, what he did for us before he left the club. For me, anyway. But that's a completely different subject. Can Eddie change it up? Of course he can. Of course he can. But it's whether he wants to. Like I said before, this is the problem. It's whether Eddie Howe can, shake off the stubbornness and turn around and give it a go doing something else. And Eddie tends to do stuff by mistake rather than by choice. And what I mean by that is I don't mean he makes mistakes. I mean, how can I put it? He gets forced into a situation or scenario through injury, and ultimately somebody then ends up playing a position that we've all said that this person should be playing, but it's just forced upon him, so sometimes that happens. But it'll be interesting to see. Is it time to ditch 4-3-3 and find a way to play Voldemort and Wizard together? That's the same question, Ches, really. Then I've answered it already. Yeah, I mean, look, I think you should be able to adapt. I think you should be able to adapt. And last night was a prime example. Newcastle United should have brought on Wissa to play alongside Voldemort. Wissa is still not fully fit. He is still going through his pre-season games, if you like, to get to where you would imagine he would need to be for Eddie Howe's fitness levels. So why not put both of them on? He's chasing shadows. He's running around chasing shadows last night, and we didn't really give him the ball. The one ball that came across the box that would have been ideal for Wissa came when Voldemort was on the pitch. And what did Voldemort do? He stopped still. He stopped still. Any forward worth his salt, any natural goal scorer would have slid in and would have toe poked that past the keeper to make it 1-1. But is it time to ditch 4-3-3? It's time to bring in other formations when 4-3-3 isn't working. That's what we need. Barry, good afternoon. What did you think of Eddie's comments about how he won't be at the club when the new ground is built? Well, I've already touched on that. I just think it's because it's so far away. I think, he's listened to what Hopkinson and others have said, and I just genuinely feel that what he's saying is the truth, that we aren't getting a new ground anytime soon. We aren't getting a new training ground tomorrow. All those planning application gone in now to change the new, change the training ground. But I think it shows that it's certainly been playing on his mind and probably the players' mind as well. Because again, remember 4 years ago, Dan Burn arrives, Trippier arrives. Part of Amanda and Mirdad's script will have been that we're gonna put money into the training facilities and the academy and this, that, and the other. And this is not happened. It's not happened. They've tarted the training ground up. They've improved it slightly, but now it's clear that that's something which has upset probably some of the players who've got no future at the club now, who are surplus to requirements, but who will be the ones, I guess, players who want to come to the club will speak to you and go, oh well, what's it been like there? What did you get offered? Blah 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 blah, and they can turn around and say, well, 4 years ago they said we're going to get a new training ground. We're still nowhere anywhere forward. We haven't got a new stadium, and yeah, we said we're going to build on this team and keep X, Y, and Z. And we've sold our best striker for 130 million to Liverpool. So players talk, players do talk. So Eddie is always going to be thinking ahead. And let's face it, Eddie Howe will not be short of offers. He will not be short of offers if Newcastle United decide to part ways with him. Things don't stay the same forever in football management. We have been here many, many times, and it'll happen again. It will happen one day. Eddie Howe won't be Newcastle United manager, but when is that going to be? Who knows? I've always scoffed at Eddie having favourites, but what is it that Gordon offers that merits him starting over Barnes or having Barnes play out on the right when he's clearly better on the left? It's a good question, Ches. Only Eddie can answer it. For me personally, last night Gordon played better, but he wasn't the best player on the pitch. Lewis Hall was the best player on the pitch by a country mile. Statistically, that was Gordon's best game in the Premier League for Newcastle for ages, but that just shows you how far the mighty has fallen. I've been so annoyed and frustrated with Anthony Gordon this year that I would never slag him off at the game, but I have I've had a field day on Anthony Gordon with my pals, going home and away to games in cars, planes, trains, automobiles. And a lot of my pals agree, you know, Anthony Gordon is a shadow of his former self. And bearing in mind that before Alexander Isak moved to Liverpool, we all felt it was going to be Anthony Gordon who was going to Liverpool. We all felt it was him who was going to get poached and taken away. But I don't know what's the matter with Anthony Gordon. I've said that he's a bit of a thinker. He's a bit of a deep thinker. He did a lot of these interviews where he was talking about doing this, and this, and this doesn't faze him, and he reads a lot, etc. Has he started believing his own hype, or is he part of the problem in the dressing room? Is there something going on in the dressing room that he's been involved in? I just don't know. That's the problem. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But there's an issue certainly with Anthony Gordon because his performances have been well below par, haven't been good enough, and he has let us down this season. He has let anyone that I've spoken to, my mates, etc. We've all said the same. He's let us down massively. He needs to start turning up. And like I say, it's December. We've still got time to turn this bang average season around, but it needs to be now. We need to start now. And we've got some home games coming up. We've got Burnley away, of course. We've got Leeds at home. We've got games and we've got winnable games, and we need to do it. But last night should have been one of them. People are saying we're happy if we'll get 4 points out of those 2 games. We should have had 3 last night. We should have had 3. That's the big frustrating thing for me. We should have had 3 points. If we got 3 points last night, then that would have been a big bonus for us. And that in itself is the most disappointing thing for us. We've got no points to show for 16 shots at goal and only 3 on target last night. And that is the big disappointment for us. It really, really is. Anyway, let's get into the next question. Barry says, he says, Hall was superb game yesterday. I just feel like our wingers offer very little, especially Gordon. 100%. If you got rid of Howe, would you do it mid-season or in the close or at the end? Not saying I would at this point, but would new boss have time to do anything? It's got to be in the minds of the owners. If Newcastle don't improve their league form, and if Newcastle get knocked out of the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, and they've only got the Champions League to focus on, which of course they're never going to win, that's going to be an issue. That is going to be something that I would say the board would look at. They will look at it and say he's had a good run, but can we do any better? And if you change managers, you don't change in the middle of the season. Really, you don't. A manager would have to go at the end of the season, and you give the manager a chance to come in and have the full summer. Do I think Howe is going to be on his bike this season, though? I genuinely don't think so. I think they will be looking at it, though. I think they will be looking how he copes with this and performs with this and what happens. But I don't think he will go now. I don't think he will go, I would imagine Newcastle, unless they have already thought about this, I think Newcastle will keep Howe and he'll start next season. That, despite anything, whatever happens, it would only take relegation, I think, to change your manager at the moment at Newcastle. But yeah, I don't think that would be the situation. I don't think that would happen. Troll says, grateful for what Howe's done, don't get me wrong, but the team's gone stale and he's got no clue how to change it, and that's dangerous. And I wouldn't disagree that, Trolls at all. I do think you're right. I do think it has gone stale. I think it's a great way of describing it. And I do think at times Howe at the end of each match looks as if he's scratching his head and hasn't got a clue, when we can all see that maybe you should just change it and put 2 centre forwards on, and he's not afraid to do it. He said, well, I've done that in the past with Isak and Wilson, but I thought after missing out on the opportunity against Sunderland to do it, that he would have done it last night. That would have won the game last night. It's easy to say, but I think that would have won the game last night. Watching Elliot Anderson, he's playing today, isn't he? 0-0 with Nottingham Forest and Man City. What a player he's turned into, a fighter and organiser, and always looking to get the team on the front foot. The lad's going to be an England player for years. Yeah, I mean, look, we couldn't see that at the time. And, I don't want to criticise Eddie and the club for that, because it was out of their control. It really was, the Elliot Anderson situation. But I would agree, he's come on in leaps and bounds, and be interesting to see where he ends up. Okay, we are halfway through the show. Time for the ad break. I need to redo these, so please excuse any references to Christmas. A big thanks to our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. They've just announced their 2026 tours. 2 crew, driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels, no interchanges, hot, cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Website is unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. It's just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, you can try us on Sports Social, and that is Sports Social Podcast Network. You can also catch us on iTunes or Spotify or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. Big thanks as well to Media Art for all the technical side of things. If you want to become a member, you can join as a YouTube member by hitting the join button underneath the video. Don't forget as well, subscribe to the channel. It's free. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the like button, which is the thumb up, and share to your other social media. If you'd like a badge, a pen, a key ring, and a coaster and a membership card, then you just need to go to our website, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk, and you can become a member of NUFC Matters via the link on our website. Got a couple of events to tell you about. Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne are together at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. That is the 13th of February 2026. Gibbo is comparing. You can get your tickets from the box office at the theatre or give them a ring on 0191 243 1171. In January, Supermac and Gibbo are teaming up together at the Tyneside Irish Centre to raise money for the North Tyneside Age UK Dementia sector. And your tickets are £19 from voucher, or you can buy them direct from the website, nufcmatters.co.uk. Peter Beardsley will be with Joe Allen on the 30th of January, again for Age UK North Tyneside Dementia. And tickets are available for £29 on voucher or from nufcmatters.co.uk. We're also raising money for Age UK North Tyneside Dementia with another Blake 7 convention, Saturday the 1st of August, 10 till 4. Tickets are £20 for standard, £75 for VIP, and you can get them again from our website. And a couple of stocking fillers for Christmas. The Entertainers by Will Scott. We've got 10 copies signed by Warren Barton, again from the website. My book, The Promoter and the Photographer, written by myself and Andy Thompson. All proceeds going to the dementia sector of Age UK North Tyneside. You can get them again from www.nufcmatters.co.uk. Welcome back, and apologies for the Christmas adverts. I'll change them hopefully today or tomorrow. Man City take the lead against Nottingham Forest. 5 minutes gone in the second half, and they are 1-0 up. And it's not Holland for a change. Okay, plenty of questions, plenty of comments coming in. Thank you very much, everybody. Toon Army says, afternoon, Steve. We are in serious trouble, although we won't go down. It's relegation form. It's the same old script. 4-3-3 subs like for like at 67 minutes. Eddie will always be a legend, but his time is up, which is your opinion. Mark says, I honestly think a number of them aren't playing for the manager anymore. Grateful to Eddie Howe, but I think a change will be good for the club now, then rebuild in the summer. And in your opinion, Steve, where do we go from here? Well, if we continue to play in the same manner and in the same way, and, you know, the sign of madness is repeating the same thing over and over again, we're going to finish just above the relegation positions and without any silverware. It's as simple as that, Paul. That's where we go. Newcastle United need a rethink, and quickly. you have to hope that they've got some plans for the January window, and that Eddie has got some plans up his sleeve for being able to utilise any players that he brings in. But I still think there's problems in the dressing room, and I've got to agree with a few people in the chat who are saying the same. I can only see Newcastle winning one of their remaining away games this season, one versus Wolves, draw versus Burnley and Forest, losses against Liverpool, Spurs, Man City, Chelsea, Palace, Arsenal and Fulham. It's not as easy to predict football like that. If it was, we'd all be winning the pools every week. But or the Super Six. I genuinely don't think, Keith, that we'll have as bad a run as you're expecting there. I think we will pick up points elsewhere. Man City, we never get anything. Ultimately, I'd prefer to win the cup game at Man City than win the league game. I often think that Newcastle will, come away with something from Fulham and Burnley as well. So yeah, a lot of things can change, mate. A lot of things can change. Are we starting to reach a stage where a game at the likes of Burnley can determine people's futures? I think every game is determining people's futures at the minute, Gary. At the moment, Newcastle players should all be looking over their shoulders because nobody is putting in performances week in, week out. So I think everybody should be in the same boat, mate. I really, really do. And Keith says Newcastle's drop off in away form reminds me of the 2004-2005 season when Sir Bobby left and dropped from 5th to 14th. Dyer said in his book, Newcastle suddenly became a boring team. I think we can look at comparisons. I just think there is an issue in the dressing room. And I think that's what happens when things like this happen. I really, really do think that there's an issue. Do PIF give Eddie Howe money to spend in January when the current form has been poor and some of the summer signings haven't performed, especially if they've got questions of Eddie Howe? Eddie Howe, I'm sure too now that Eddie Howe did not spend that money in the summer. Those players were thrust on Eddie Howe by persons unknown. And I think there was PIF representatives who made those decisions and they weren't advised by anybody. They made those decisions. They looked at who they could get, and I think they've been sold a couple of players there that have, at this moment in time are letting us down. Rogers. Let's see. I had another question as well. Yeah, there it is from Gavin. Do we need a manager if the team play the same way, no matter what happens in the game? 3 subs for like. Do we need a manager if the team plays the same way? We always need a manager, mate. We always need a manager. Keith says Newcastle have only scored 7 goals away goals in the league this season, only scoring 4 goals in 4 of their 9 away league games so far this season. Yeah, I mean it's pathetic. It's pathetic. Our form is down there with the teams at the bottom of the league. It is poor. Is this the most important transfer window for us in Eddie Howe's time? Yes, Steve. Yes, AJ, it is. But it's who makes the decisions. And who is the person who is lined up to get those players in. We've got a scouting team. We've got a brand new scouting, a brand new scout involved. We've got a new sporting director and we've got a new CEO. So, we've now what we need. And I said this at the start of the season, AJ. What we need now is a period of stability in the boardroom, because it's been chaotic, to say the least, in the last 2.5 years. And, we've had sporting directors going through a revolving door. We've lost the woman who was the face of Newcastle United for the takeover, and Amanda. And, the people who've come in haven't hit the ground running. And we need a period of stability because that. Apologies, everybody. Apologies. I suddenly went off there and no idea why. But yes, what we need really is a situation at Newcastle United where we have stability in the boardroom. We need to have that situation where we have a sporting director who's in there for a while. Nottingham Forest have just equalised, by the way. Notts Forest. Hutchinson has scored 1-1. Okay, let's get back to the other question. Sorry, the technical issue threw us off kilter there. We're not getting Craig Hope on the podcast. I did ask him, George, and I did reply to you the last time you asked the question in the chat. He's unfortunately tied to Daily Mail and is unlikely to feature on any other podcasts. That's basically what he said. But we did ask him, George. Bit disappointed, but there you go. You've just got to respect his decision. Sorry to say, 2030 to be Top Guns, as claimed by Hopkinson, is absolutely light years. The current situation is very worrying, and it is quite simply a mental issue. Man United away, we had 46 crosses with no goals to show, and we've got the tallest squad in the Premier League. So where does the set-piece expert earn his corn? The other teams benefit from set-pieces, so why not us? Richie, great point, mate. Set-piece expert. It was a big hullabaloo about him coming in, and with the exception of one or two, different types of corners and different people taking corners, it's been a big letdown. But mental situations come into this as well. There's no doubt about it. But I think it's a combination of, like I called it before, different pieces of the jigsaw just not fitting together this time, and that's the big concern. Do I think he's lost some of the players, says Minoka Mag? Yes, I do. I think that's half the problem. I think there is another piece of the jigsaw. There is trouble at Mill in the dressing room. There is issues going on. And yeah, it might just be as simple as those people who are close to Isak aren't happy. There will be people who aren't happy that things haven't happened that should have happened, that they were promised. There will be other people who now will be aware of, that there will be people coming in and maybe on a different wage structure, for example. Anything can upset the balance and the equilibrium in the dressing room. And it's something that, happens at football clubs time and time again. For years, we haven't had a brilliant dressing room. Like, for years, we didn't have brilliant dressing room atmospheres. There was completely different, groups in the dressing room. When we had the French contingent, for example, they're all sitting on one side and you had people sitting on the other. And, you had the young and the old scenario when Bobby Robson was there. You had your Bellamy's and your Dyers and your Jenners sitting on one side, and you had your Shearers and Harpers and Givens and Rob Lees and whatever on the other. It's what happens. Very rarely do you have a dressing room that is all together, but when you do, that's when you tend to find that things are going well. Has Eddie lost some of the players? I wouldn't be surprised if some of them have now gone, actually, I'm not getting it anymore. Would you be happy? Would you be happy if you were on, I don't know, if you were, let's pick a player out of the ethos. If you were Harvey Barnes and you played the games and scored the goals he had, would you be happy if you were continually getting substituted for somebody who wasn't given 100% in a black and white shirt? And then worst case scenario, would you then be unhappy, to find yourself sidelined and then coming on the right hand side as a substitute? And the other person staying on the pitch. And of course, I'm talking about Anthony Gordon. I think that would, I would be knocking on the manager's door. I would be knocking on Eddie Howe's door going, this guy isn't putting the effort in. He's nowhere near as good. He hasn't scored a goal this season. He's had one assist this season. His goals are penalties. Is that all he has to do to get in the team? What have I got to do to keep in the team? Barnes has got every right to be upset. I really don't understand that particular scenario. And if Barnes has a couple of bad games, keep playing him. He'll come good again. But he knows where the back of the net is. At the moment, Gordon is letting us down massively. If we keep replacing like for like after 65 minutes, we are not giving the opposition anything to think about. Yeah, exactly. Because it's madness. You're repeating the same thing time and time again. And you might be changing the substitution slightly, but it's just garbage, man. It's absolutely garbage. It really is. Do you think this issue started in the summer before Isak or after he left? I think it's been something that's been, I don't know, a bit like smouldering thing to say. Probably think something that's been smouldering away, Gary. Something that started, these things tend to start small and they build up. And like I say, it's not one thing, I don't think. I think it's a multitude of things. You can tend to pick up some of it from the press, and there's been nothing in the press at all about players, right? About players not being happy, etc. But there's definitely been issues. You've seen it in the paper. There's been issues with security. There's been issues with players' houses being targeted. And yeah, that's not just a Newcastle United issue, because you see it up and down the country. Players' houses getting burgled and, when they're playing football. But Newcastle hasn't been exempt from that. And I think that can create an issue. We know that there's been, the humans, they've got personal lives going on as well. But on the flip side of that, they get paid a hell of a lot of money to play and kick a football around, which we would all like to do. I'm sure, and get paid a, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80,000 pound a week. Would do great for me, kicking a football around twice a week. And they've got it too easy, man. They've got it too easy. That stat last night, was it 1906? Newcastle first played Manchester United. And it was Boxing Day and New Year's Day. They played each other back-to-back games. The same 11 players played in both games, and Newcastle travelled to Old Trafford on Boxing Day, and then they shared a charter train back to Newcastle a couple of days later to play the game at St James's Park. And ultimately, the same 11 players played back-to-back games. Players nowadays, they'd have a collapse if they had to do that. It's just so crap, isn't it? Football nowadays is crap. It's as simple as that. Mark, I've been disappointed in Ramsey. He was energetic, quick, and a goal threat at Villa. He's so slow on the ball for us. Willock's no good anymore. I'd take a cheeky punt on Oscar Bob. And I mean, Man City going to sell to us though? Do I really think that? And is Tonali playing like someone who wants away? You know what? He's at times he's been one of the better players, but I just think Tonali's getting dragged down to the same level as the rest of the team. I think our wingers are letting us down massively, Mark. And I don't know what the answer is in that midfield. I really don't. We massively miss Joe Linton when he's not playing. And Joe Linton, when he's played now this season, isn't the same Joe Linton. And he's clearly carrying an injury. I would be very surprised if he doesn't need surgery. And again, that's just by watching him. How can you suddenly become, go so far back? That Joe Linton in the cup final, that was the last decent game Joe Linton had for Newcastle United. In fact, that was probably the last decent game that we had collectively for 90 minutes, that cup final. But I don't think Tonali's playing to get away. I just think he's as down as everybody else, I genuinely think there's an issue across the board, and I think some players react in different ways. We can't blame this season on Isak. Yes, he's a snake. There's a thing called moving on and get going. But the Isak thing is a huge part of it, Trolls, because he left right on deadline day, and Newcastle United's manager and coaching staff clearly didn't think that they were going to lose Isak. They clearly felt that they would get tested, but they weren't going to lose him. But that has chucked us right under the bus, because we spent the summer trying to get a replacement, and literally Liverpool bought our replacement. They bought Ekitike. I think Ekitike had come to Newcastle. I genuinely feel that if Ekitike had come to Newcastle, we would have been fine. I think we would have been in the same position as we were under Isak. I think he would have hit the ground running, and that was it. But he's gone to Liverpool. Newcastle lose Isak on the last game of the season, and Newcastle end up with Voldemort and Wissa, which we know what the story is now. Wissa's no good until he gets fully fit, and Voldemort can't play as a natural out and out goal scorer. 50p in the meter, yeah. God, I don't know what happened there. I think I pressed a button and I just suddenly ended up going out of the room, and the show's still going on without me, which isn't much use, really, is it? Should write off this season. It's clear we need a reset in the dressing room. I hate to say that, I really do. I asked you and Mitch this question a while ago. Does the captain that lifts the Premier League trophy for us currently play for us? I don't think they do, sadly. Mark? I'd say no now, mate, yeah. I don't know what I said originally. I think were fairly positive at the time. But no, I mean, we are a million miles away from winning a Premier League title at this moment in time. We need a centre midfielder that can open locks. The lock picker, Sean, that I've gone on about for years now. And we badly need a left foot attacker. Time and time again against low blocks, we found out. Eddie looks defeated. I've no idea who to turn to. Simone, perhaps? I really don't know what the answer is. I really don't know. But we didn't create last night. That is the big problem. Do you not think the players are not on board with moving to pointless possession ball? I think there's more to it than that. I think there's more to it. I really, really do. Has there been some dickhead behaviour in the squad? I don't know. But I just, you can see something's not going well at all. And like I say, I'll repeat myself, but the players getting off the bus is something George pointed to a while back, and I didn't really look at it, and I just think, possibly. If we're married to the same system, maybe we could play Gordon and Baltimore at home and Bonds and Visser away. But this is the problem, isn't it? It's getting Visser fit for starters. It really does. Bigger belief that we're talking like this. Ipswich Town's manager would be a good shout. Don't know enough about him. Huge criticism yesterday is, why do we continue to throw our best finisher onto the right? Is Gordon getting preferential treatment because of England? Don't know, but we mentioned that earlier, didn't we? Barnes will ask to leave in January. One of our top scorers, says Gavin. I don't think he'll ask to leave, but I don't think he'd be happy. We need to remember we've got the 7th most expensive squad in the Premier League. We aren't the underdog story some people seem to suggest we are now. It's a good point. And Richie says, I'm convinced that Anthony Gordon has his eye on the World Cup and doesn't want to get injured. Harsh but true. Has Tuchel spoken to him on the quiet as he constantly raves about him? God, I would hate to think that. Golf and Geordie, I'm sure the club can afford a footballer's gated estate. Yeah, I mean, I've never understood this whole thing with footballers and, being burgled, because, with the money that they make, surely they should have the state-of-the-art security systems. You would think anyway, but clearly they don't. Questions need asking again. I'm still eddying, but the team needs a shake-up. Tactical decisions must be made. 46 crosses, but no one attacking the balls coming into the box. No nous at all. Yeah, and it's so frustrating. If we lose at Burnley, will the same Howe tactic subs, will you feel the same towards Howe as you do today? Good question. Yeah, I'm not going to chuck him under the bus just because of one result at Burnley. Systematically, it's getting worse though. My attitude has been fairly positive all the way through the season, but pretty much now we're coming through the end of the year and the start of January, and we can't kid ourselves anymore. We've got to look at it and say, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable at all, and we aren't happy. And I heard a few people booing Newcastle United last night when the players came over for their obligatory clap. I think little things will get on people's wicks. I told you guys I don't like the team photograph when we win. I think it's stupid. I don't like that idea. I think it's embarrassing. And of course, the one at Sunderland came back to bite us on our arse massively. I would stop that. Stop doing that. Do the players enjoy doing that anymore? You made your point. It was great when we stayed up. Don't continue to embarrass yourselves and do it. Eddie's not into all of that. It's really surprised me that they've continued to do that. Knock it on the head, start again. What's the players getting involved in the music side of things for? Why do the players need to make a decision on what they come out to? If that is the case, if the players are the ones who made that decision, who changed that? And then suddenly it was changed back again for the Chelsea game. Concentrate on putting the ball in the back of the net. Stay on the training ground for an extra hour and practice on, trying to convert a goal from 46 crosses instead of being worried about whether you're coming out to Bladen Races or Local Hero, for God's sake. That's what you should be focused on. That's your focus as a footballer. Leave all of that crap to, the stadium announcer and the people who run the match day experience. Who cares about that? Who really cares? Nobody. We never see the players happy training, having a laugh like we used to. It's a telltale sign of a split dressing room. Yeah, and I do think that's a problem. I really do. Fans clapping for a poor performance is what fans expect. We'll miss out on European football this year. What worries me is players will want away. Yeah, of course they will. Of course they will. Jeff, thank you very much for that, mate. Tonali needs to play in a better football team. His enthusiasm with what's around him is evident. Yeah, and I think that's partly part of the problem, he's dropped to our standards at the moment. Tonali is knocking 5 million off his agent every game for a move because no one could afford him 2 months ago. Interesting. I didn't know that. Newcastle fans now being called happy clappers. What has happened to our fans? Yeah, well, I mean, some people are. Some people call us happy clappers, which is bizarre because we're certainly not that. Whoever allowed Wissa to play for Congo on sack, and he should have pulled a sickie. Steve, if we get this window wrong, it could be the end of the era. Bruno, Tonali, Tino, Botman will all go. I wouldn't be sad to see Botman go, Sean. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think if we could cash in on Botman, I would, and buy a better centre-half, mate. I would buy Gahey as opposed to him. I've never been a Botman fan, and, I got sucked in a little bit, but my prediction on Botman was right, and he hasn't been great at all. Wouldn't like the football Simone plays, says Gary. Interesting. We've got a long way to go to win that 100 100-year title in 2027. We need a huge rebuild this summer with a new MA at the helm. Yeah, it's a fantasy that winning that title then, but you never know. John Askew sent us a few questions. I would be rude not to at least accept one because he always sends a load in. He says, what do you think of the following lineup, which takes into account current injuries? It's a version of 4-4-2, which seems to offer more shape and balance than the usual stuff. Ramsdale in goal. No, I wouldn't have that. I would play Pope. Miley right back. Got no option, so yes. Hall left back. Yes. Centre backs, Shaw and Chow. Got no option, so yes. Tonali, defensive centre midfield. Yes. Bruno centre midfield. Barnes on the left and Murphy on the right. Yes, if Murphy's fit. Walter Marder, number 10, and Whistler up top. I agree with it 100%. Got no arguments from me on that. I would play that team 100%. And I'm an advocate of 4-4-2. It's a system I played as a manager for 20 years, and it never let me down. And I reverted to 3-5-2 and 4-4-2. But yeah, I think Eddie should be brave and bring it back. That's what I do instead of sticking to 4-3-3. I just don't think it's working at this moment in time. Is this our most worrying time since the takeover? Yeah, I would say it is. We've been in positions before, but this away form is concerning. So yes, it is the most worrying time since the takeover. Is it vital we make good use of the transfer window? 100%. It's very interesting, this transfer window, because it will tell us a lot about PIF. It'll tell us a lot about the new sporting director, Ross Wilson. Should Eddie be doing better with a squad at his disposal? There's arguments for and against, but yes, he should be. He's got a bye because of the back four at the moment, but those stats are damning last night. 46 crosses, 16 shots, only 3 on target. Damning. His job, week after week after week, is to get that right. Doesn't matter how much training you're doing, Eddie. Those stats are terrible, and you need to improve them. 4-3-3 has fallen at the minute and has been a problem for some time, but Eddie loves it and isn't going to change. Why stick to a failing system? Exactly. It's a sign of madness. And it's becoming tedious now for some Toon fans venturing along to St James's because much of the football is uninspired drudge. And the least said about away performances, the better. Do you think it's really 3 points at Burnley? How's it come to this? I don't think people are saying it's drudge. Only people who haven't been there through the bad times will see this as a bad time. This is still, nowhere near as bad as we've all experienced. Sit and watch some of the stuff I've stuck onto the Facebook page. Join our Facebook page, not the group. Well, you can join the group as well. But I share videos on there of games gone by. And there's been some stinkers. So have a look on there if you want to remind yourself of how bad. Even the relegation season's on there. The 1988-89 relegation season. That is a bad season. This isn't. I know you don't want too much about the transfer window, but should we bust the bank to sign an informed goal scorer as a priority? You know what? We need a striker and we need somebody to create, because at the moment, we just don't seem to have the best midfield either. A lot was made about this midfield being the best, and it's far from it. So maybe a left-sided creative midfield player and a goal scorer should be the priority. Defence is not the problem. Leave the goalkeepers alone for now. Leave the centre halves and the full backs alone for now, and concentrate on getting yourself a decent striker, if you can find one. A decent striker, a really good striker. Have they misprofiled Walter then because he's never been a lone striker and Eddie's isn't adapting? I don't think they misprofiled him. I think they've just panicked. I think they've panic buyed. I think they've missed out on their first, second, and third choice. They've ended up with Voldemort. Thank God we didn't end up with Sesko. That would have been a mess. But yeah, I mean, look, Voldemort has done enough to suggest that we could sell him for a profit. There's certainly money to be made. He's proved he can score goals in the Premier League, and that's not a bad thing. It would be worse if he was sitting there with Sesko's record, put it that way. So at least we've got somebody who is a sellable asset. There will be a team, in Europe who will look at that and say, we can use him 100%. And if he goes and has a good World Cup, then that will pile the pounds on him as well for us. People go on about creating. It's players that can stick the ball in the net that we lack. Too many cooks. Everybody wants the ball to fit outside the box. This is why Bonds needs to play. So, I mean, last night, 16 shots, but only 3 on target. It's just wayward striking. Midfielders are too busy getting the ball, passing, getting the ball, passing, get the ball, passing. None of them want to have a dig. None of them want to do what Phil Foden does on a regular basis, and that's hit the ball from outside the box. And we need more of that, you know. Lewis Miley's good at that, but of course he's stuck at right back at the minute. Too many players flattering to deceive. Bruno, Gordon, Baltamada, the record signing, he's simply not good enough. Will we play the same against Burnley and get the same result? No plan B. Yeah, because we're already telegraphing. We're already telegraphing what we're doing week after week. He's got to look at this. Eddie's got to look at this before Tuesday. He's got to and go, I've got to do something different. He's got to do something different. Even if it's not at the start, if it's at the end. But God, I'm at the point now where I would just give the youngins a chance. Give the youngins a bloody chance. Thank you so much for this, Steve. I was foaming after last night, feel much better after realising all of us fans feel the same. NUFC Matters is such a must-have group. Thank you, Barry. Yeah, it's mate, honestly, it's awful. It's really, really awful. Great point on the music, Steve. Players should look at themselves more. I just don't understand it. What on earth? You know, I'd heard the rumour that the players were having a say, well, maybe the coaching staff were having a say on the music that they were doing the kickabout to, the start of the game. Why? What on earth do you need that sorting out for? Just concentrate on practicing do your job when the game kicks off. Ridiculous. Do you think the club have a short list of managers? I'm sure they do, Sean. I'm sure they've always got a short list of managers. At least you'd think so anyway. But I mean, who knows? Our club has been so disorganised behind the scenes over the last 2.5 years. You know, they'll have had so many lists and ideas, and they change every time somebody goes through that revolving door. Eddie is too tactically rigid and one-dimensional. Everything is like for like all the time. And if you look at a lot of the players we have, it's much of a muchness. Yeah, very true. Eddie has bored the squad to death, says Andrew. If you don't change the way you play from time to time, the opposition's going to know how to set up. Steve, do you go out New Year or New Year's Day? I used to go out New Year's Day, mate. I always used to go to Ashington, mate, to see me pals who I used to work on the doors with. Mate, honestly, I'm at that age now. I don't bother, mate. I'll be sitting there and having a nice curry, mate. That's what I'll be doing on New Year's Eve, and watching a bit of telly. I get more fun going out with the lads, like when Mitch and Stu or Steve or whatever, we all try to get out over that period and try and catch up with each other. So I had that session with Mr. Penman and his good lady, which was great. So my next one is with Mitch and his dad next week. So I'm out with Mitch and George. That's the next one. Steve Hasty, unfortunately, is working, so I'll have to go out with Steve on a different occasion. And it was Steve Hasty's birthday, so he's been quite busy as well. Will we let Eddie spend in January, or will we bank it for the next manager? And I said this before, I don't think it's Eddie who spends the money. Scott McTominay would be a great signing. God, imagine if he ends up here. But we need a striker. We do need a striker. It really, really does. It was 100 times more worrying before the takeover, by the way. 100% it was. Transfer window, can you get rid of players? That's a problem. I'm sure they can. I think Newcastle have got a lot of sellable assets. It's whether Newcastle and Eddie Howe want to sell them. Even the most staunch Eddie backers are going to have to start putting a time scale on how long they think he deserves to put this right. I would agree on that. Okay. I am going to finish. I'm going to read a couple of comments before I finish. Though Derek says, last night only Hall took a chance outside the box and hit the bar. Not one of our players took Hall's example and took a shot outside the box. It's puzzling to watch. And Richie, thanks for joining in from Facebook. I wish a few more people would, but thank you. Every opponent realises they will score against us at any point in the game. Our coaching staff were totally caught out. Amaron's formation changes in the game and left us scratching our heads. Goals are scored by shooting at every opportunity. Finally, I'm sorry to say it's a results business, and even if we cannot win, then don't lose. And if Eddie was trying different things, it wasn't working, I would have more hope, but being stubborn as a mule doesn't fill me with confidence. Okay, I hope that's been a bit of therapy for all of you. Have a good day today. Back tomorrow morning, first of all, 10 o'clock with Three's a Crowd. And then me, Mitch and Stu will be doing an episode of The Professionals tomorrow night. So 2 shows for you tomorrow. Look forward to seeing you all then. Enjoy your day and whatever you're doing. And I will see you tomorrow morning. Take care, guys.